Hello, everyone, and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is Tosh and I'm here with my friend David Lewis. Hey, Dave.
Hey Tosh, how are
Hey,
you?
good. How are you?
I'm okay. Just
Yeah,
came back from a run. Have not showered yet, so I apologize to the listeners. Thankfully, it's not live.
yeah,
You don't have to smell
yeah,
me.
yeah. That'd be weird if on Zoom or on podcasts you could smell the odors of the guests,
Yeah,
right?
that's actually a good point. I do actually watch a lot of cooking things on YouTube to try and
Oh,
like understand recipes, and I visualize it.
yeah,
And often they're like, I wish you could smell what I'm smelling. This smells delicious. And
yeah,
sometimes I'm making it and it doesn't smell so delicious. So I'm
yeah,
thinking, I'm doing something wrong here. So I think that like maybe there's something to it. I don't know. Maybe in 20, 30 years, there'll be
yeah.
some sort of 3D fumes that'll come our way. through the-
Yeah, that's good. Well, I watch those cooking things too. And do you ever think like how many takes it takes them to get that like the perfect shot? I'm assuming it's not a one take thing. I'm sure like one time he burnt the pasta, one time the water is not boiled properly, one time they're missing an
yeah.
ingredient. But it makes it look so flawless the way they make it together, eh?
Some people are very polished, and
Yeah.
obviously there's the celebrity chefs, and they're used to doing whatever and winging it.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the ones that they make mistakes
Yeah,
and
it's human.
they just go with it. It's more real. So yeah, I don't like it when it's too polished.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then
Um,
also timing. Whenever you watch these episodes, like they condense time, obviously, so they can like
yeah,
I know they say you can make it in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but some of this stuff takes a long time to make. But it's just like it's exactly like when you go see a picture of food, like on McDonald's advertising, like the burger is like designed and edited perfectly. And then when you get the burger, it's like this looks nothing like
yeah,
the box.
yeah, exactly. No, I do struggle with that. That there's a few recipes where they're like, this is a 15-minute meal, a 20-minute meal, and like an hour and 15 minutes later, I'm still like working my way through the recipe. And but I think that like if you kind of repeat it with a few recipes and get the handle on it, then you can kind of speed things up. But I don't think I'll ever get to the stage where I'm like chopping onions and not chopping my finger off, and
Yeah.
that's just a next level chefery.
So as long as I've known you, which has been almost like 20 years now, I know you
Crazy.
like you're a big like you like cooking, right? You like preparing food. I mean, like you're good at it. So you're just like if I was to come to your house for dinner tonight, if I took the the night the red eye to the Netherlands, like what would be your go-to dish for like guests who come over? What would you prepare?
I would do like slow cook some sort of beef
Mm,
or lamb
mm.
in the oven. So it'd be like
Lamb's good.
I like
Lamb's good.
lamb, big fan of lamb. It's not very common in the Netherlands, so it's quite expensive.
Oh,
But I would do something in the Dutch ovens, these gigantic pots.
oh,
You
nice.
kind of like put tomatoes, celery, onion, carrots. Um, in your case, I wouldn't put the wine in. The alcohol would burn off, but I could do non-alcoholic.
Oh,
Um, and then you just throw in the big cut of meat,
yeah.
and then you just let it go into the oven for like 4 hours
And
and
just
slow
slow
cook it,
cook.
and then it's delicious.
Oh my gosh, that sounds
So
good.
that's my thing.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that about the price of meat. I was actually just talking to my wife the other day and I was like, oh, we've lived in a few countries around the world, but like different countries have different focuses on different types of meats. For
Mm,
example, in Malaysia, chicken was extremely cheap because people were just like that was their meat go-to meat, whereas beef and lamb were much more expensive and they didn't eat it as much. But when we went to Turkey, it was the opposite. Nobody really ate chicken, so lamb and
mm.
beef were more accessible and affordable. So it's interesting to know that in the Netherlands, lamb is not a big thing,
Yeah,
beef and chicken. Yeah.
and definitely I had the same experience. Like in the UK and Canada, generally speaking, I think it's animal agnostic. They'll take any animal and
Yeah,
whatever you want, it's
I
there.
like that. Yeah,
But in like somewhere like Hungary and Central Eastern Europe, it's very much like pork
yeah,
products. And I don't like cooking pork. It's not a thing I do regularly, so I really struggled with cooking there because I was
yeah,
like, there was almost no other option.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it.
So yeah, it really changes country to country.
And
So
I don't know if this is happening in the Netherlands. Here in Vancouver in the West, like there's like a huge movement for like vegetarian veganism sort of now. Like there's more products. Just the other day, I bought like vegan sausages from this company called Beyond Meat, I think,
yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
that they're growing. And honestly, like they're not bad. Like if it's a little bit healthier once or twice a week, it doesn't matter. Because I remember growing up, we used to eat these veggie burgers and they tasted like garbage. Like I was like, this is so gross. But now they've kind of upped it a little bit. So like, yeah, I mean, there are alternatives. I think variety is the spice of life, right? So why not? If it can help your health out, not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay some of the times. I think it's okay to try some like vegetarian, vegan burger options, but then I draw the line when they try and like replicate a shrimp or
Yeah,
like certain animals, and I'm like, if you're a vegetarian, vegan, some of them choose to be that way because they don't want to try anything that tastes like an animal ever
yeah,
again.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm not
and in
there.
many ways, like the food from the subcontinent, like from India and Bangladesh, some of the best vegetarian food in the world because they've had such a long tradition of it,
Sure.
and they're not trying to be like this is a burger made out
Yeah.
of beetroot.
The Indian beetroot burger. Yeah,
Yeah, they haven't tried that. They just do really good vegetarian
I
curries.
agree. That's a very, you make a point that I will not argue with. I completely agree. I think if you're going to go veggie, there's certain foods that have been around that you should go with. But if you can eat a burger, man, nothing beats a beef burger. Like they're so
Just
good.
go for the burger. I mean, I think it's good to like be vegetarian a few times a week, and then
Uh,
just
It's
go for the burger once or twice a
we it was
week,
my
month.
yeah, it was my wife's birthday last month, pretty much around
Huh.
this time.
Happy belated.
Thank you. So we went to this vegan like restaurant for dinner, and like it was all vegan, like A to Z. And usually, you think you get like hippies and like hemp and like braids and like tie-dye shirts, but it was pretty classy. It was pretty nice. The bill
Those days are
obviously.
over. Yeah.
And we went to this place and like we had all this food. So they had like we had like I had like a tempeh bowl and like we had sushi and this and that. And like I was telling my sister and my wife and my parents that like it wasn't bad, but I thought it was like a little too overpriced for things that shouldn't. Vegetables aren't really that expensive, but I think it's like the new trend plus the place, etc., etc. So I think with time it'll become more affordable. But like eating, I think should be accessible for all, and I think it should be kind of manageable. And then like whatever people want to eat, they can eat, but we should try to stay away from crap, I think, generally as a society, right? Like I think that's a standard agreeable point.
Yeah, ideally. One good thing about the Netherlands, which I've said a few
Yeah,
times, is the quality of the produce. They
love it.
produce tons of fruits and vegetables in these huge greenhouses not far from here.
Yeah,
And it's quite impressive to go to the shops and just see how much just comes from this country, which is tiny.
yeah,
So I think that's really important. Try and have fresh, not so processed food. Yeah,
yeah.
just everything in balance, everything in moderation as much as possible. But sometimes it's hard, Sometimes you get a big packet of chips, which is delicious, and you can't stop.
You just gotta eat it. Oh, it's the best. Anyways,
Anyways,
anyways. So it's my week to present, and I thought I'd go a little light this time. And so
okay.
I've changed my background in lieu of the topic.
So
Uh,
you got the tropics and waves and
yeah.
nice beach there. Okay.
So one thing that I'm really interested in is like I fantasize about is being stuck on a deserted island and just being able to relax and rest for a while until I go crazy. But so I was looking into kind of like real life stories of people who've been kind of marooned on islands, and I came across the story of Alexander Selkirk. He is actually it happened a couple hundred years ago. He was actually the influence for the book Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe.
Okay.
So if we go back to the late 1700s, Alexander Selkirk was a Scottish gentleman from Fife in Scotland.
Very nice.
I've never been there, but I'd love to go. Scotland is on my list of places. I hear it's beautiful, right? Quiet and beautiful.
Yeah. Lovely.
Lots of vegan food there. I'm just joking.
Haggis.
Haggis. Alexander was a huge troublemaker, very unruly, a big troublemaker in his family. I think I read like dad was sort of kind of frustrated with him. He had six other brothers, and they were like okay, but this kid was always causing issues. Um, even to a point where he was causing trouble in the church one time, and so the elders in his community summoned him to come talk to him, but he already had left to join like a group of pirates, so he didn't come to the meeting instead,
As you do.
as you do. So he goes off with these pirates. He causes some problems in the water. He comes back to land. He's this trend keeps going back and forth. Then in the early 1800s, 1703, oh my gosh, that's 400 years ago, 300 years ago, he joins an expedition that goes to the South Pacific. It's two ships that are going down to the South Pacific. And let me lay out the history a little bit right now. So the War of Spanish Succession is happening right now. So if people don't know, my history's not that great, but there's Spain is pretty much a big colony, a colonizer around the world. They have a lot of land. A lot of people are wanting to separate from Spanish lands. The reason this is important is because there's a lot of unrest in the waters. Ooh. Like a lot of ships from different countries, a lot of fighting. And this is really unique to hear is that the ships that he was on were given these things called letters of marque, which is pretty much permission from the authorities to hold weapons on board because of the war that was happening. So, and so because of this, the ships he was on had weapons on board to self-defend and against the Spanish if they encountered them on the waters. So in a year after from sailing off, he's on the corner of Cape Horn, which do you know where Cape Horn is? I think
not really. I thought it was off the coast of
Chile.
South Africa. Or am I totally off?
It's a little to the left. It's off the coast of Chile. Anyways, so he the main point is he's off the coast of here. He gets into the battle with the ships encounter the French, so there's a little bit of fighting there. There's really bad winds, and just a little bit of a preamble to lead to what's happening. So they get out of there. They head over to Panama. They find a small little gold mining town, which they raid and they loot, to survive. So they're kind of living the life, man, like kind of Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean, enjoying life. So they're outside of Chile and they stop on this little uninhabited island on this group of islands called the Juan Fernandez Islands to resupply. Nobody on this island. They're just there to resupply. But their boat is in really bad condition, like it's leaking. There's holes, and he tells the captain. Selkirk tells the captain that, listen, man. He didn't say, "Listen, man," but you know what I'm saying. I'm gonna add a
verbatim quote.
21st century aspect to it. He said, like, "Listen, if you're not gonna fix this, I'm not getting on the boat." And he starts fighting with the captain, and the captain's like, "Fine, don't get on the boat." And so he's like, "Stay on the island," and the guy's like, "I will stay on the island." And so the guys, they actually leave him on the island and they sail off. And then Selkirk realizes pretty much they called his bluff, and he's like, he starts regretting it, and he's like, "No, no, come back, no. And at this point, the boat's gone, so he's alone on this island. The good thing is that he's given some supplies. So he's given a Bible, a musket, a hatchet, a knife, a cooking pot, some tobacco, some clothes, and some bedding. And so the first few days, he starts panicking, right? And he's like, "Oh, no one's coming back for me. I'm out." He gets lonely. He's staying by this is kind of sad. He's staying by the shore of the water just to keep a lookout for any other ships that go by. So he's miserable, he's remorseful, he's lonely. He starts hunting with the supplies that he has, lobster. Apparently there's a ton of lobsters, so if you like seafood. Hey. But this is the funny part. So the mating season for sea lions comes in, and there's like hundreds of sea lions that come onto this island, and this guy's like, "I can't stay on the shore," so he goes inland. Because it's like, I don't know if you know, but sea lions can be kind of vicious and like harsh, even for his own safety, he goes inland. And so once he goes inland, he actually encounters goats, which were introduced by other sailors who had come earlier. He sees turnips, which are delicious, I guess, cabbage, pink peppercorns. It's a type of fruit. And so he realizes, hey, man, life is better inside the island, right? And so he's got all this food on. It's not just lobster. He has supplies. He uses his musket to hunt the goat. He uses his he's got like good clothes on, everything that's got going. Eventually, his musket runs out of gunpowder, and so then he starts to go manual with his knife. At one point, he actually was chasing a goat, and they both fell off the cliff. And
No.
he could have died, but he landed on the goat, and it broke his fall. But he was still pretty much injured, you know. Um, he realizes that at night he's having some problems because there's a lot of rats in the area. But he finds a bunch of cats that he domesticates to help him with the rats. So while he sleeps, he's got these cats on like lookout.
Very smart.
So temperatures aren't bad. We're really talking like tropical island temperatures, anywhere between 10 to 20 degrees. But one of the problems he encounters in the beginning and obviously throughout is rain. So what he decides to do is he uses his tools and he makes two huts out of the pepper trees. One hut is for sleeping and one hut is for cooking. So, you know, five-star accommodations, not bad at all, right?
Of course.
As time goes by, his shoes get destroyed. But this is kind of gross. But the calluses on his feet get so strong that he's like, oh, I don't need the shoes anymore.
Mm.
So that's good. And his clothes start getting like a little old and like smelly. So he actually uses the goat skins that from the goats he's killed for meat as clothing. So
That's not too smelly, is it?
I don't know anything about that, but from what I've seen, I think you can kind of dry them out, right, and like clean them and
Mm.
wash them. I don't
He
know.
seems like he has already quite the skill set.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually interesting. I'll tell you when he gets rescued, what happens. It's very relevant. So at this point, Selkirk's like, you know, he's got his setup, he's got his five-star accommodations, he's got two buildings, he's got good food going. I guess it's just about loneliness and what to do. So apparently he read the Bible a lot to stay you know busy as well as like sang a lot of songs. He did it also just to practice his language and his English all the time. I guess he's by himself, so just to not lose language. But he's also Scottish, so I'm assuming English was his first language. But just who are you talking to, right? At one point, a Spanish crew anchored on the island, and so he was kind of like looking, but they were at war with the Spanish. So if he got caught, he would have for sure been arrested or taken on board. They actually saw him at one point and they chased him, but he hid in a tree, and they were like, "Ugh, leave him," and they left the island. But he actually made the right choice because his ship, which marooned him, actually had to surrender to the Spanish in another part. Those
Mm.
injuries to the ship were actually pretty bad. So and then they tried fighting, but they lost, and so they were taken hostage or taken over by the Spanish. So he spent 4 years and 4 months pretty much alone on this island before he got rescued. In
Wow.
1709, an English ship, one of his countrymen, landed, and Selkirk actually helped these people on board. They were really sick and they were hungry, so he helped get them the goat, which is, I'm assuming, delicious after 4 years. And he helped kind of like rest them all back to health. And then as kind of like you know, he didn't want to stay on the island anymore, so they were so happy to help this guy get back to civilization. They actually called him the governor of the island, which is like a little thing. And they were the captain of the boat was so surprised at his survival skills and that literally he wasn't insane. He had like very good peace of mind being on this island by himself. Selkirk actually didn't go home. He kept living the sea life, looting and continuing on. But in 1711, he finally comes back to Kent in England, and he becomes a celebrity. People are writing articles about him. People are discussing him. Actually, this is when the influence by Daniel Defoe comes into play. He actually writes Robinson Crusoe, which comes out about 8 years later, and it's based off of Selkirk. Uh, um, Selkirk eventually joins the Royal Navy in an official capacity, the Royal English Navy, and he dies unfortunately about a couple years later due to tropical illness, and he's buried at sea. But I thought it was really interesting because I was thinking of the movie Castaway the other day, and I was
Yeah,
thinking when
yeah.
I was there, and I started googling, and I was like, I wonder if people have really like lived on islands and for how long. And apparently, there are a ton of people who have been stuck on islands, but this one seems to be the more legit long term one. The other ones are not really like for a couple days or like in a group of people. But I was interested in like people alone, long term on an island and how that plays. And an interesting thing is in February 2005, 16 years ago, they did an archaeological expedition to the island, the group of archaeologists, and they found some of the cool instruments that Selkirk used 400 years later. It was decaying a little bit, but they found these like navigational dividers from his time period. And since Selkirk is the only person to have been known to live on the island, it must have been his as well. So there's a bunch of
Who
cool little,
funds that kind of work? Because I would love to get some sort of research grant to go on an island and poke
like
around.
like Jeff Bezos, like people who have money and they don't know it. So I wanted to like it's a cool story and it's a cool idea, and I think a lot of people have fantasies about going to like sandy white beaches and blue waters, these islands. But this guy actually did it, and like he found a way to
He was
survive.
living the dream.
He's living
Yeah.
the dream. And so I wanted to ask you, your first question is that like, is this something that appeals to you, running away to an island for 4 years, 4 months, or for any amount of time, or is it just no, I'm good? No.
I'm good. I'm good. I've been very lucky to have gone to very nice islands in the
Yeah.
Pacific. I've been to Hawaii, Fiji, and I've been to the Caribbean, Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Very nice beaches, very
So
beautiful.
nice. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like it's away from what I consider civilization, and for me, it's a holiday. That's my mentality, and I'm like, I can't spend more than 2 weeks, maybe a month there,
Yeah.
unless I was like running a surf school or a shawarma shack that we discussed over
Yeah.
the years. So no, I really couldn't. I don't think I could do that. I like the ability to just pop in and out.
Yeah. I mean, okay, what if I up the ante a little bit? What if I was like, you could take any form of entertainment with you, whether it be books or television or this and that. Like I'm talking about like real R&R, like real rest and relaxation. Like, and you could bring, let's say you could bring anyone you want with you. So you get someone to bring plus any form of entertainment. Would you change your mind? No worries, no stress.
Yeah. It sounds a bit better. Sounds a bit better.
Okay.
But definitely not to the extent of what this guy did going on his own. I mean, it's amazing how he didn't lose his mind. Because surely humans have this point where when they're on their own for so long, they ended up making friends with a beach ball and screaming at Wilson.
Wilson. Well, I think when I'm going to rewatch Castaway soon again, and like I think
That's the more likely outcome. I think.
Totally. I think humans are social creatures by nature, and being alone is kind of not something we should do. And many cultures and religious backgrounds and familial backgrounds encourage people to be in groups as well. I mean, getting marooned on an island is something you don't really have a choice, right? It just happens. But there's something that's appealing about it, don't you think? Like about just being in this like beautiful place for a while. I too, like you, would get bored very quickly because I don't like doing things for a long amount of time. Like when it comes to things like this. But something about it, like if you had a couple books and then like you had food and like sitting there and like by yourself would be amazing, wouldn't it?
For how long?
That's a good question. That's true.
A year? Could you do a year?
I mean, theoretically, I could do any point, but it's like how much? What's my quality of life like? Right? Like okay. Are you a very outdoorsy person, hunting, building your own huts, starting fires?
No way. No.
You can use an app.
Exactly. Push a button.
I was a Boy Scout growing up for a while, and I guess we sort of learned it, but I would have some trouble. I think huts I could figure out because it's pretty like you just need a roof over your head, and fires I'm not good at. But hunting, no way, man. Maybe that's where my veganism. How many coconuts can I eat? But I guess you have to find routines, right? Like I mean, think about this guy, right? He gets stuck on this island, and thankfully he's got a bunch of supplies. He seems to be an outdoorsy guy, so he's like okay. But like I think he'd have to stay sane in some capacity, and that would be schedule, right? Routine.
Yeah, that's very important for anyone's life, as we know from COVID times, just to have some sort of structure to the days when time kind of loses all sense of meaning. There's no structure of a 9 to 5 commute for most people these days. It's just sort of fluid between work and home.
Yeah.
So it's 100 times that when you're marooned on an island somewhere. And whenever I think about that, I think about, it's got to be like South Pacific somewhere. That's like the most remote, part of the world.
Totally.
Yeah. And actually, there's also that part in where Napoleon, the story of Napoleon, where he was causing so much trouble, they stuck him in this island in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, off the coast of Spain, I think, or something, right?
I think it was Elba.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't good enough. It was too close to civilization. He worked his way around and caused trouble again.
Yeah.
And then they stuck him in St. Helena, I think it was.
Yeah.
In but that's South Atlantic, off the coast of Argentina.
Yeah.
So you really got to like stick people in places like that and the South Pacific to like get them totally cut off from society.
Yeah.
Because like the best bet for Tom Hanks and for this guy was to just wave your arms in the air and hope that the sea lions or the Spanish would see you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, that's what I think. That's what well, Tom Hanks, I think he made a ship and he went out to sea and he took his chances, right? And then he got caught by a freight boat, found him, but like the boat didn't come close to the island at all because he was so isolated. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a strategy though. Like if you get stuck on an island, there's some things we can learn as well. Like number one, I think the most important thing is food and shelter, right? You got to find a good source of food and at least protect yourself because these places are susceptible to rain and storms a lot. I know it's beautiful
mm.
weather, but it can be that. So like as long as you have food, you're okay theoretically, right? Like
So what would you do though? Like day one, say you just got plunked down in one of these like survival TV shows or just
a
whatever.
survivor.
Survivor. Yeah, but Survivor is like there's
It's
even more extreme versions, right? There's this
television, yeah.
yeah. But there's a few other ones, like even Bear Grylls. There's another guy, I'm forgetting his name, but they just like plunk them down somewhere and there's a cameraman following them around.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's very extreme versions of that I've seen online.
yeah.
What would be your first action? Say like on hour one, afternoon one, day one. How would you go about it?
I would try not to panic because that would be my natural reaction. I would probably
Phone a friend.
50-50. No, that's good. I would probably probably map the island. That would probably be my first thing. Like I probably walk around the edge of the island, which I've done on a few islands I've been on. Not to map it, just for just for entertainment and exercise. So I'd probably map the island just to
Yeah.
kind of get my lay of the land. If it's a big island, then I mean that's of course it'll need more time. But if it's small, then I know what I'm working with. Um, and then I would probably try to kind of like organize what I do have on me in terms of like inventory, you know, because like
Mhm.
you don't need food immediately. You could be okay for a couple hours. So yeah, but
Yeah, but wouldn't you start getting a bit?
panicky.
For me. That's the danger because you get comfortable, like I got time, and then
Oh,
when you're hungry, then you get desperate and you start making mistakes.
well, I think you get like you know, they do this on Survivor too. Is that when you don't have food for a long time, you go crazy when you do get it, right? And even on Survivor, by the way, they have to like they don't feed them, right? Like you have to hunt your own food. I forgot how it works, but I heard that doctors are there like making sure you don't stuff your face with food when you do get it because you can go into like
Mm.
your body can over. So food would definitely be a big part of the thing. Being able to find food and ration it I think, and find what type of food there is. But it's not like I think the first couple days, I think I could probably like live off of coconuts or greens or whatever it is. Like
For
it's
sure.
seaweed and stuff. Like, do you remember? I know we keep referring to Castaway. I know it's not real.
Hmm.
It's a movie, but you know the guy loses like a ton of weight and he just learns how to like hunt fish and you know like this and that. So I think you'd have to learn those things, right? Like if you want to survive. The but I will tell
Do
you
you
the
think you've watched enough documentaries to know how to do that?
no, I'm like you. I'm horrible when it comes to outdoorsy things. So I don't know how to hunt for it. But I think, yeah. What would you do? What would be like item number one?
Yeah, probably a little bit like you. I'd try and get lay of the land and see what's out there, but I think trying to figure out like hydration and shelter
Yeah,
options, and see what the dangers are in this location. If I could just chill out somewhere, if there's something that's going to attack me,
yeah,
because it's just a crazy story. Like when we were in Fiji, on this family holiday we had, we were there for like I think 2 weeks. Really can't remember,
yeah.
but we just started exploring because we were on a private island, and we started walking. It was me and my mom,
Just you
and
guys
out
on
of
the island?
no, well, like it was a private
Oh,
resort, so
yeah.
like the only
It's
thing
just
on the
them.
resort
Yeah,
was this hotel thing,
yeah, yeah. I was like,
and
oh, big baller, Dave. The Lewis family. They have
and
their own island.
although they did take us for like a day trip to this super private island,
Yeah.
but like my mom and I went for a walk one day, like just to see how far things went on this island.
Uh,
And within like an hour, we came across like a wild pig, and this thing was
Warrior.
crazy. Like it chased us. A war? It was a warthog? No. I don't know. It was just some really extreme
Yeah.
wild animal, and we were frightened. Right, like
Yeah.
we just realized how pathetic we were. Like so soon into it,
Yeah.
we just said, "Call it over. We're gonna have that for dinner tonight, but
Yeah.
we're not gonna take any kind of extreme measures." So
Yeah.
it's funny how humans react when they're like exposed to actual real
Yeah.
nature,
Yeah. Totally.
because
Especially when you're from the
people
city,
can't.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a city slicker, like I've seen people like they freak out if like a swan comes near them, or the kids start crying if a duck comes near them. So like humans really aren't used to these days, like
Yeah.
handling animals. So that's a real challenge to be able
Yeah.
to understand like and compose yourself around the beasts out there.
So it's so funny you say that because I'm also a city slicker, and like if you tell me like where do we go to eat or where do we go to like pay our phone bill, I'm like yeah, town this road. Like I know cities really well, but I'm also out of my element when I go to kind of more outdoorsy places. But I've been on a few islands which are not private, but they were like holidays in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean. And first of all, uh, like there's something about an island that's really appealing. I don't know what it is about, like getting away or about relaxation. I can understand why resorts build on islands and try to buy their own islands and just kind of give you that exclusivity. But something about it is also a little weird in the sense that like you're just in the middle of nowhere, right? There's like nothing around, but you're surrounded by this natural beauty, right? It's like these two opposing forces. And I think most people from the city who go to islands go for just holidays and resting and relaxing. But like, have you ever met these people? Like some people actually like move to these islands. Like that's where they live full time. Like that's where they make home. And they just kind of like give up everything. I remember I was in on an
They
island
probably
next
they probably committed pseudocide.
suicide. Hey, I know you. Shoot, yeah.
Yeah,
So like
exactly.
I've been on islands where it's like I've seen people and I'm like, what are you doing here? Like they're not on holiday. Like that's where they live and stuff, you know? So and I'm only there for a couple days, right? So I don't know. What's the most beautiful island you've been to? There's a question. Which one did you like the most?
Tough. I think in like the Mediterranean, which is very nice.
Oh,
Sardinia.
yeah,
Sardinia is incredible. But Fiji was on another level. I think Fiji is just incredible. But the problem is just like the sheer distances and time and expense of getting there. It was not easy.
yeah.
Um,
Are we
like
talking blue waters, sandy beaches, palm trees, like
it
all that?
was just the dream. It was just incredible sunsets, perfectly clear water, nice sand. The food was nice.
Yeah,
Just you felt totally. But the feeling you get is hard to describe. I think that's what would trouble me the most if you decided to do this, Castaway thing,
yeah,
is just the feeling that you've just cut yourself off
yeah,
from the world.
yeah,
And obviously, that's kind of disrespectful to people in those countries because they live in an island and it's a country and they have their own thing. But
yeah,
for me, coming from like the huge landmass of North America and Europe and stuff, it just feels like you've the far side of the moon or something like that.
No, I totally know what you mean. It's not only a physical isolation, but it's like this an emotional, mental isolation too, right? And so, but like if you look at
Mm.
it from the other point of view, there are some of these islands have natives who have grown up this way. And so when they see that foreigners are coming in and that it kind of takes away from their security and their sense of home too, right? Like they had grown up that way and now they
Yeah.
like a Starbucks on the other side of the island.
Yeah.
But
Well, one of the experiences, have you been to the Caribbean? You've been
mhm.
sort of like, have you done like a all-inclusive week,
No,
those types of things?
I went for work, but I did go to Antigua and Barbados, which is like one of the islands,
Mm.
and I saw all the like. I know that a lot of the Caribbean countries have these like resorts and like cruises and like this sense of kind of like foreigners coming in a lot for business, and so yeah, I get it.
Yeah, because that's the thing that threw me off. That was the first time that I went somewhere like that. It was we went with my family for Christmas once to the Dominican Republic,
Yeah,
and it was one of these all-inclusive resorts,
yeah,
and we were there for a week. But what struck me was that we arrived, and it was like one of these vacation airports where like just foreigners coming in, being stuck on
yeah,
a bus, and going to off to their little resorts.
yeah,
But what I remembered most was it was a nice airport, and as soon as you got in the bus, they closed the curtains or like had the curtains only slightly open,
yeah.
because basically you would go through the countryside and then
They don't
arrive
want
at
you to
your
see.
resort, and they didn't want
Yeah,
you to see like the poverty
poverty.
and the challenges and the difficulties that the
Yeah,
everyday people were facing there.
yeah,
And I'm like, and I felt kind of guilty, because all the best coastline in this country and in a lot of these countries are cut off to the
Uh,
locals, and they can only access it by either being employed on this resort.
yeah.
Um,
I yeah.
which, yeah, I understand you need tourist dollars and whatnot, but it was kind of a weird
It
feeling.
No, you're of course. I understand what you're saying. I think I've been in many places as well. I didn't get curtains, but I know that like I've always been surprised that like the place I ended up on was different than what like the way the foreigners were living on the island was different than how the natives lived on the islands. And so even like a good example was I also have been to Hawaii. I've been to 3 islands out of 7 or whatever, and it was shocking for me that Hawaii, which is kind of put up as this like beautiful paradise, kind of suffers extremely in certain parts of the state, right? Like some of the locals really like don't live the way we do, the foreigners do, and so like it's sad, but at the same time you don't want to lose your heritage, but at the same time you need money to come in, so you know that's why you have to charge foreigners for like $15 for a smoothie or whatever it is, you know. So like yeah, I don't know, it's a little strange for the system. I hope we can find ways of kind of helping locals as at the same time encouraging tourism. But I think one of the things that we like these hotels and these resorts do that's really not great is that they really come in and they have so much money that they can buy chunks of the island or their own island and just do whatever they want to do, right? In the Maldives, I've heard that a lot of big corporations will come and just rent out or buy an entire island and just make it their island, right? And so you land in Mali on a plane, and then a private boat will take you to the island, and then you're just all inclusive on this island, right? And then of course they hire all locals and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like they just do whatever they want to do, and so with no regard for cultural respect, you know. And so
That is one place which is really I don't know. I kind of want to see it, but I know with climate change and all that, it's like, should you
sinking,
be
yeah,
flying to all these places and burning up the planet with this? But because it's like you see the hotels and they're basically just on the water, right?
yeah,
There's no
like
coastline.
yeah,
You're just
yeah,
on these stilts, and you just step out and you're in the little thing.
yeah.
So that's probably one of the most unique spots you could go to for that type of experience, I think. I can't think of anywhere else like that.
Yeah, it's I've never been to the Maldives, but I've stayed in a hotel once in Malaysia, which is sort of like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember, yeah, yeah. It's sort of weird. Like you look down and it's like see-through glass and you can see the ocean. And I remember though I'm like so I like washrooms like in hotels. Like I'm like, oh, it's in a fancy washroom.
Yeah.
Like something unique, you know. I remember the shower and the bathroom was sort of like outdoorsy but still private. Like it was just you and the fish, I guess. And like it was kind of weird, but it was kind of unique and cool. But yeah, like this soul, I don't know. I mean, I also struggle between kind of like helping, like it's different, right? If you stay in a hotel in Las Vegas versus staying in a hotel in like the Bahamas or whatever it is, like on an island, it's unique and it's different, and it's an experience, and it's over like it's so expensive. But but yeah, like I don't know how much we're hurting the locals, the environment, and how it's built. I know, but it's the thing, right? For some reason, human beings like we're out, like everyone. Whenever people talk about holidays, I think I would say most people would be like, "Oh, I'd love to go to a beach or like a hot destination or
Mm.
something." It's a good marketing toy, but like that's why I think a lot of corporations have really kind of got into this. I know if you go down to the Bahamas, like they have that famous hotel, the Atlantis Hotel. It's got that big walkway in between those two arches. I don't know. In
Yeah, yeah,
Dubai, yeah, in Dubai, they've also replicated that. Plus, they have their little
yeah.
islands that make up the world. Uh, uh, um, so in the Caribbean, I've heard Disney owns their own island too. So if you take a Disney cruise out of Florida, it'll actually stop on its own island, and it's got a whole like 5-star hotel or whatever. So like it's fascinating. A lot of celebrities have bought their own islands too. And, like I know Johnny Depp's got one in the Bahamas, and then he's like built it up. It's sometimes what I like to do just when I'm bored is I go to Sotheby's.com, that high scale real estate website,
Hmm.
and I look at properties for sale around the world, and you can buy islands right here in my home state province or anywhere in the world. And some of them are not expensive. I'm surprised. Like some of them are a couple 100,000, you know? So
Well,
yeah,
maybe, with all the money we're making from Super Respectable, we could,
have our own island.
have our own island and, run the whole show from there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Dave, so here's a follow-up.
Yeah, yeah.
Here no, 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 I didn't mean to discard you. I mean, playing off of that point is if I gave you the money, I mean, not that I have it, but if I gave you the money and you only could buy a private island, like all you could do with the money, where would you want to buy the island? Is there a certain country or region or place? It doesn't have to be sandy beaches and blue waters. It can be foresty islands, or it can be,
Oh no, it's got to be sandy beach and blue waters. I mean,
yeah.
why would you buy anywhere else?
Well,
Um,
not to discredit. I know each week we isolate someone. We can isolate my home province of BC. If you take the boat through a bunch of islands to the main island, they're in Vancouver. It's called Vancouver Island, where Victoria is. You can see little islands, and people live on them. Like if you take the ferry, you can see that people live on these little islands in the middle of the ocean. No, not ocean, but like but it's all like foresty islands, which I'm not a fan of. I get kind of creeped out by those. It's kind of scary.
yeah, that's not my scene. I think I'm a big fan of Europe and its
Yeah,
islands, but that's probably
pricey.
too civilized, and
Uh,
I need to be a bit more out there. Maybe a Caribbean island. I think that's the right place to go.
yeah, the British Virgin Islands are like
But the problem is
Anguilla.
the hurricane season. Like each year, you got to wonder whether your island's going to be wiped off the map with huge storms and stuff.
If you have enough money, you can pretty much do whatever you want on your island, right? You could duplicate your apartment now on the island if you wanted to. You could protect yourself from hurricanes, best technology, security, etc.,
Yeah,
etc. But if you didn't have the money, you just have to go old school and build your own hut and stuff like that. But like I think a lot of billionaires, like Richard Branson, like lives on his island full time. Like that's his home on the Virgin Islands or whatever. So like and so he's a
yeah. And
billionaire.
that horrible sex offender
Jeffrey
Epstein had his
Epstein.
own island.
Where
Yeah,
was his island? His island was
it was in the Caribbean
in the
somewhere.
Caribbean. Yeah, that's gross. Like
Do
that's
you say Caribbean or Caribbean?
I say Caribbean. What do you say? Caribbean?
I don't know anymore.
Okay, if anyone knows, tell us how to get it across. Okay, just as we wrap up, my question though is that if you had to go on an island and you had to bring some type of entertainment, music or books or TV or stuff, like what would you bring? Go into details. Like, are there things that you want to read?
Like, would I have Wi-Fi?
No Wi-Fi. I'm sorry. You'd
No
have
Wi-Fi.
preset books, preset television. Like you don't have to watch the same episode over and over and over again.
Oh man, that's not healthy. Um,
Maybe go
yeah,
no TV, just go books.
Kindle would be good. As long as there's outlet. Would I have plugs? Could I charge my Kindle?
Sure. There's one plug on the island.
One plug. Okay. Yeah, I'd bring my Kindle maybe.
Yeah. I get a lot of reading done.
It's all these things that you don't think about though, because with the storm, the books would probably get destroyed, but so like your electronics would probably go first. You'd be better off with physical books.
Yeah.
Maybe you could hide them.
So it's so stupid how it's so funny to look back on how you live your life. When I was in 2013, I went to a bunch of South Asian islands and like cities, and so I did a little trip by myself for a few months. And so I didn't bring Kindles didn't exist at that point, or maybe they didn't. I didn't have them, but I brought a book with me, a travel guide, which I read like 15,000 times from front to back because I could have memorized it by that point. But I brought a small tablet, and I had like the same two Office episodes of The Office, which I watched like 100 times.
Oh no!
But I realized like when you're on the trip, you sometimes don't like the technology sort of kind of dissipates. You don't really want to do it anymore. Like books are good, and then like getting to know people and experiencing things. But like I felt like I didn't want to watch television, on those trips. I didn't really care about the movies and stuff like that. But like sitting there and like having a nice like coffee or whatever it is that you're drinking and just kind of enjoying, that kind of took over. But of course, if I was to stay on the island for longer than a few days or whatever, I'd want some form of entertainment. I would just go probably like an anthology of books, probably, like something I could kind of take the time to read.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good. I guess it's kind of like going to jail. You'd want to have a nice prison library, so you could learn something once you're released again.
So that's my thing. That's my thing is
yeah.
that of course I don't want to go to jail, but if I were to go to jail, a part of me would be like a little bit of little relaxed, as long as it's like a low, because I'd have the time to do what I wanted to do.
You'd want to be in like the Martha Stewart prison or something.
Yeah, I want to be in the place where they're like, "Hey, Doshio, it's time for like
it's time
archery
for
lessons or whatever." Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, there's something about because like I think the one thing that appeals to me about the island is that like you have no more responsibilities. Your only responsibility is to survive, right? Like you don't have to worry about
That's
bills.
a big responsibility. It's pretty stressful.
Yeah, that's true. But no bills, no kind of like your rent, no kind of making money. Money is obsolete at this point. It's just you and kind of being able to kind of ground. But I would definitely get cabin fever. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely one of those social people where like I can go a while without talking to people, but after a long period of time, I'd start seeing like things that aren't there, or like start talking to
I would definitely
all.
talk to myself, but I
Oh,
already do
totally.
that, so it would
Oh,
just
me
be a
too.
lot more. But one of the things I saw from a few of these clips of people who've tried recently to live on their own on an island for some time, I guess to
Yeah,
impress people online or just get some views, or I don't know why they would do that.
yeah,
The thing that would limit them was, of course, they would go a bit crazy, but they would end up with like some small injury, like they would
yeah.
stub their toe or cut themselves.
No
And in,
medicines.
in like in your house, that's okay. You got a first aid kit, you can put on a band-aid, and you could, I don't know, put a pack of ice on it or something. But it is crazy just to think how like a small little injury can
Really?
develop into something bigger and bigger. So like on this island, there's a guy I saw who like he had a small cut and he had no way to treat it. He had like a little kit, but like in a tropical environment, it could very quickly get from bad to worse.
Yeah,
And it's like it's amazing how that something so small could end up like derailing the whole project.
that's true. We are
Um,
so yeah, that's very true. Like
Modern medicine.
no medicine. Have you heard about these people who volunteered to caretake islands, and that they I every once in a while, like if you go online, they'll talk about the world's greatest jobs or et cetera, et cetera. And if you click them, it's most of the time it's about these people that have won these contests or these applications to spend a year on an island by themselves and map it out,
That's a bit like
or
The Shining, though. It's like the guy won a
yeah.
prize to look after this beautiful hotel and then ends up going mental and killing
Oh,
people.
yeah. Well, The Shining is creepy as hell, but being on an island and seeing things that aren't there would be creepy as well. It'd be creepy if
Yeah.
you're on the island with someone else and you didn't know and something weird was happening, right?
Did you watch Lost?
Oh, don't get me started, Dave. Episode one to the finale, I watched every single episode and I was so upset at the ending. Now I have a rant
Don't
against it,
don't no spoilers. Uh,
but
I
it's
watched
good.
a few episodes, but then it got a bit crazy when there was like supernatural things happening.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
weird. But
yeah,
if you take the supernatural out and talk about just being on an island with a group of people and surviving, it's similar. They started off on the beach and they go inland, and like there's like a Robinson Crusoe effect to it. I mean, if you ever read Robinson Crusoe or watch like the Disney movie or whatever it is, they romanticize staying on an island because it's like a family of people, and then they eventually make their own huts with like water passing through it, and then like they have everyone. But like I think the main priority on staying on an island would be to get off the island, just
yeah.
surviving so you can get out.
Okay,
But
so here's another option then. For in terms of isolation, if you were given the option of like in Italy, they have these options where you can like buy a village in
uh,
Sicily that's
like a dollar,
struggling. You can like for $1.
yeah,
If you had the possibility of just like being this mayor of town of just you,
yeah,
population you,
yeah,
or like somewhere in remote Canada, remote Siberia,
yeah,
you're not an island, but you're in a huge landmass far from
yeah,
anybody.
yeah.
These are three options. What would be your order of preference?
What are the options again? Island,
So
village,
like
and
a huge forest, like big landmass to yourself, like
yeah,
somewhere in Canada or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Siberia,
Siberia,
or
yeah.
abandoned village in
Oh, like ghost town.
Italy, or
Uh,
some ghost town in who I don't know, the U.S. somewhere.
I would go island, ghost town, land mass. And I would go in that order because islands are, I mean, I just sunny and blue waters and small, so I can do it. Towns because they're like the infrastructure is already there, and landmass last because I just don't like forests. I get creeped out by forests, so I'd go in that order. But I mean, I would prefer number one. What about you? What order?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. I think it's kind of cool. Maybe I would think it'd be fun for a bit for my delusions of grandeur to be mayor of like abandoned town,
Lewistown? Yeah.
Lewistown. So that's cool. I think maybe I just thought of another episode for Super Respectable, which would be, in Siberia, they've had all sorts of stories of this during like the USSR, Soviet Union times. They came across like families who'd been living in Siberia that they hadn't like surveyed and they didn't know existed, and
Oh,
these
really?
people had barely like had any contact with civilization.
Wow.
So I think that's definitely a topic for another
I've also
podcast.
have you heard playing off that? Have you heard about these small during the Cold War? Have you heard about the USSR, Russia building these American towns in Russia so they could kind of learn the culture
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it? So like you'd go and it'd be like, "Welcome to whatever it is," or and people would speak like American English and like Fords driving down the street and American homes and stuff. That's creepy, but interesting in that sense. But
Totally,
yeah, you can
totally.
there. So where I live in BC, British Columbia, there during the gold rush, there were a lot of towns that were small towns around Vancouver up north where people used to come and mine for gold. But then when the gold rush ended, people just ditched it, and so you have a bunch of these ghost towns up and down the highway. Like you can take it and you can go and they're fully built, and sometimes they're for sale. And I remember reading an article about this entire town like functioning. By the way, like community center, apartment, like general store, blah blah blah. That was for sale, and some Indian millionaire or billionaire bought it out, and he wanted to turn it into like one of those like company retreat places, like where you could like rent it
Yeah, yeah.
out and like people could go to leadership stuff. I think it never came to fruition, but there's ton of like I'll send you links and stuff. There's all these towns that people stop in, and it's like it's creepy, man. Like there's like 3-story apartment buildings, there's the general street, and it's just dead. There's nobody and nothing there, and sometimes people live in these places like optionally. I don't know why,
Yeah,
but
well, housing's expensive in Vancouver, so you gotta explore
yeah,
your options.
it's creepy. I going back to Johnny Depp. He owns a little. I don't know if he still does or not. But he owned a little town in France. He bought it, and it was like a small, really small, but like it was just his pretty much and his family's. And like there was the main house, and then you'd go down to the restaurant, which was his like place he had food, and there was like a chapel and this and that, and you could walk around one of those little towns. It was really interesting but creepy at the same time. And for me, I always think like what if you're like how do you manage and secure your property? Like what if someone else comes onto it in the middle of the night or something and like something's off? It's so big you can't, you know what I'm saying? Like you can't
Yeah, that's not for
control it.
me. I mean, I've been at a few places in Canada where
Yeah.
it's not a cottage, but it's some remote country property, and that freaks me out more than a cottage or anything because it's just like this huge expanse of space. You kind of expect someone to just like appear at the window, and
Yeah, yeah.
it gives me
I have
nightmare. Gives me nightmares.
Dave, I have the exact same worry. And my worry is not exactly at the window. My worry is in the middle of the night, you're in your study or your office and you're looking out the window onto your yard and there's someone in black standing there watching you. That is
No,
literally
no, don't talk that. That's gonna give me a nightmare.
well, that's why I wonder is these people that have such huge properties, like how do you like, at least if you live in an apartment or whatever, like you're safe and you're controlled. Like these people that have acres and acres and acres of land, like how do you control that and manage that, like generally speaking, like you can't have like security guards or like dogs or like whatever it is, like running around that all that stuff. And that's why like I'm not for it. When I was 12 or 13 years old, I watched this movie called Watcher in the Woods. It was a Disney movie, and it was about this. I don't know how it was a Disney movie. It was creepy as hell. I could not sleep for 3 months afterwards. I had trouble sleeping because I remember one scene. This girl looks out the window, and there's another girl in the forest like staring back at her, and I was like, "That's gonna happen to me." And I remember having nightmares. So like ever since then, no forests for me. I try to,
No forest.
I don't camp. I don't do
Blair
this. I
Witch.
don't Blair Witch style. But I guess that's the opposite of isolation, right? But just as we end, if you could have any, if you didn't have to stay on an abandoned island, but you had that same sense of paradise, is there something transferable that you would do instead? Would you be like, no, I would buy the penthouse on Fifth Avenue in New York or something like that
Well, like, what would be the best alternative to the dream of a
for you?
Pacific beach?
Yeah,
Uh, any European city, having
yeah,
a nice centrally located place.
yeah.
Um,
I
I mean, where we are is close to the dream, but it's not the dream. And we have a nice apartment in The Hague,
yeah,
but moving up to like Rome or
yeah.
I don't know, any one of these nice classic European cities and having a maybe a classic Amsterdam canal house, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I get it.
And one of those things, I think one of those classic things that people come in for are their holidays and for the European holidays.
Yeah.
And this living there is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
a cool concept.
Sometimes you can get a balance between the two. There are these like beautiful homes in Europe, on like Italy and Morocco and Spain, Morocco, like Spain, the Mediterranean. I mean, where it's like next to, like, you have neighbors and you're next to civilization, but you still have like a beautiful like view of the ocean, and it's not creepy, and it's like it's nice. But I think one of the things with Europe that kind of, it's like it's a very traditional old system. So a lot of like those houses and stuff, they're really old, aren't they? Like they're structurally, historically, like it's not a modern design, right? They're very like old fashioned.
Yeah, there's a lot of upkeep involved. I mean, there's always the famous British aristocratic castles and big properties.
Yeah.
And it's like in the dream of a lot of people in North America who've watched those TV shows. And but the reality is not so glamorous, because they're hugely expensive to run and operate, and heating costs. And imagine vacuuming that place or hiring staff to do that. No thanks.
That's totally. I think that's, you make a really good
You can't
point.
do double glazing because of heritage rules. And
yeah. And it's so like whenever I always would like my fascination is with like Ireland and Scotland. That's my thing. And so like some of these castles and stuff, they look like, oh, so stunning and stuff, but like they're so old, man. Like I wonder if like the upkeep is horrible, and like you can't modernize it, and like you can't, like Wi-Fi doesn't work through stone.
It is. Wi-Fi is a problem.
Like, do you think the Queen's house in Balmoral has Wi-Fi? Like, I don't know.
Not something that was considered during the time of construction.
But you can buy a castle, by the way. I when I go on Sotheby's.com, I see castles from time to time, and I actually, you might be able to help me out with this. In the UK, I always see, when you go outside of London, like people are always selling their country estates or their family homes, and they're really big and stuff. I wonder if people are starting to just be like, we don't want to deal with any of this anymore. Like,
they're just really expensive. They're a huge money pit.
And they're old.
No,
right?
It costs a lot of money to maintain them, and like generally speaking, that's quite well-off families, but their source of wealth has evaporated over the years.
Inheritance.
And so they think of like, they host weddings on site, or they have tourists come through, or they do all sorts of things just to keep generating money for the place. So
for the place.
Yeah. Well, we can think about it. Yeah, exactly.
Anyways. But yeah,
it's very interesting, Tosh. I enjoyed this topic very much.
Thank you. If people have comments, if they want to go to the islands, let us know which island you'd go to and where a dream vacation would be for you. But it's very fascinating. I think that's the dream for a lot of people, but it might not be a reality. But I mean, test it out, because for me, I remember, just as we end, I always used to have this picture of blue waters and sandy beaches in high school. I'm like, that's the dream. And then when I actually went there, I was kind of like, I'm good. Like, I need to stay active and do something else. So I, like you, would stay near a city, near people, something for me to do, because I don't think the islands would be that great. In fact, I don't think any holiday for an extended period of time would be suitable for me, but once in a while, R&R is good.
Absolutely. I could do with some R&R right now.
Anyways, Dave, have a great night. Thank you for everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.